The forest path. The couple had heard the stories about the black-eyed children, but they didn't believe them. They decided to take a shortcut through the forest on their way home, but soon found themselves hopelessly lost. They stumbled upon a clearing, and that's when they saw the children with black eyes, standing in a circle around a blazing fire. The couple tried to turn back, but the children blocked their path. They slowly began to advance, their black eyes gleaming in the firelight. The couple realized too late that they had walked into a trap, and that they would never make it out of the forest alive. As the couple backed away, they stumbled and fell. Unable to keep their footing on the uneven ground, the black-eyed children closed in on them, their hands reaching out to grab them. The couple tried to fight back, but their efforts were in vain. The children were too strong, too determined. They dragged the couple towards the fire, their black eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The couple screamed in terror, but no one heard them. The forest was silent, except for the crackling of the fire and the cackling of the black-eyed children. They tossed the couple into the flames, and the couple's screams turned to agonized howls. The children watched as the flames consumed the couple, their black eyes glowing brighter and brighter as they reveled in the horror they had created. When the fire died down, the children vanished into the shadows of the forest, leaving behind nothing but ashes and the charred remains of the couple. The days turned into weeks, and no one found the couple. They had vanished without a trace, leaving behind no clues or evidence of what had happened to them. The forest remained silent, but those who knew the legends whispered that the black-eyed children had claimed yet another victim. Years passed, and the memory of the couple faded into obscurity, but those who ventured into the forest at night still whispered about the black-eyed children and warned others to stay away from the forest path. They said that the children still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their next victim to stumble upon their trap. The forest path remained a place of terror and mystery, a place where legends became reality and the darkness held sway, and those who dared to venture there did so at their own peril, knowing that the black-eyed children were always watching, always waiting. Despite the warnings and rumors, there were still some who were drawn to the forest path. Unable to resist the lure of the unknown, some sought the thrill of danger, while others believed that the legends were just that, legends. But the black-eyed children were real, and they continued to hunt the forest path. They took pleasure in the fear and suffering of their victims, and they were always hungry for more. They lured people into their traps, using their black eyes to hypnotize and control them. And so the forest path remained a place of horror, a place where the darkness held sway and the black-eyed children ruled. Those who dared to venture there did so at their own risk, knowing that they might never return. But there were some who refused to let the darkness win. They banded together, determined to drive the black-eyed children from the forest once and for all. They armed themselves with weapons and spells, and they marched into the forest, ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The battle was long and brutal, but in the end the black-eyed children were vanquished. Their hold on the forest was broken, and the path was safe once more. But the victory came at a price. Many had been lost in the battle, their lives sacrificed to rid the world of the black-eyed children. And even though the darkness had been banished, the memory of the horrors that had taken place on the forest path lingered on. And years passed, and the forest path became just another stretch of wilderness. But those who had fought in the battle never forgot what they had seen, and they passed down their stories and their warnings to future generations. They knew that the black-eyed children might one day return, and they were ready to fight them once again should the need arise. And so the forest path remained a place of legend, a place where the darkness and the light had clashed in a fierce battle for supremacy. And even though the darkness had been driven back, it would always remain a part of the forest, lurking in the shadows and waiting for its chance to strike again. The haunted house. The family had just moved into the old house on the outskirts of town. At first, everything seemed fine, but then strange things began to happen. Doors would open and close on their own, objects would move inexplicably, and the family would hear faint whispers in the night. And then they saw them, the children with black eyes, lurking in the shadows of the old house. The family tried to leave, but the children wouldn't let them. They seemed to be everywhere, always watching, always waiting. The family realized too late that they had moved into a haunted house, and that they were not alone. And as the days passed, the family became more and more isolated. They tried to call for help, but their phones and internet were inexplicably disconnected. They were trapped in the house with the black-eyed children, with no way to escape. The family began to experience terrifying nightmares, haunted by visions of the black-eyed children and their eerie whispers. They would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, only to find the children watching them from the shadows. As the hunting grew more intense, the family began to unravel. They turned on each other, their minds warped by the unrelenting horror. The father became violent and abusive, while the mother retreated into herself, lost in a haze of drugs and alcohol. The children were the only ones who remained sane, but even they were beginning to crack under the weight of the haunting. And then one night, the black-eyed children finally made their move. They descended upon the family, their eyes glowing in the darkness, their voices chanting in an eerie, otherworldly language. The family was powerless to resist, their minds consumed by the children's hypnotic gaze. The next morning, the neighbors found the house empty, with no sign of the family or the black-eyed children. But some say that if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you can still hear the faint whispers of the children haunting the old house and waiting for their next victims. Over time, the old haunted house became a place of dread and fear, with locals avoiding it at all costs. Those who dared to venture too close reported strange occurrences, doors slamming shut on their own, ghostly whispers in the night, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Rumors began to circulate about the black-eyed children and how they had claimed the family that had lived in the old house. Some claimed to have seen the children themselves, lurking in the shadows and waiting for their next victim. But there were some who refused to believe the rumors. They scoffed at the idea of a haunted house and laughed at those who claimed to have seen the black-eyed children. They thought they were above such superstitions, and that they could handle anything the old house could throw at them. And so one day, a group of teenagers decided to spend the night in the old house. They thought it would be a fun way to prove their bravery, and they were sure that they could handle anything that came their way. But as the night wore on, the teenagers realized that they were in over their heads. Strange things began to happen. Doors creaked open on their own, ghostly footsteps echoed through the halls, and the black-eyed children appeared in the shadows. The teenagers tried to run, but the black-eyed children wouldn't let them. They chased them through the halls, their eyes glowing in the darkness, their voices chanting in an eerie, otherworldly language. In the end, the teenagers were never seen again. The old house remained standing, a monument to the horror that had claimed the family and the teenagers alike. And the black-eyed children continued to haunt the house, waiting for their next victims to come along and fall prey to their hypnotic gaze. The knock at the door. It was a dark and stormy night when the knock came at the door. At first, the woman thought it was just the wind, but the knocking persisted. She approached the door and peered through the peephole, but could see nothing outside. She hesitated, but something inside her compelled her to open the door. When she did, two children stood before her, the boy and a girl, with black eyes that seemed to swallow her up. The children asked if they could come in, and the woman felt a sense of unease wash over her. She tried to shut the door, but the children were too strong. They pushed their way inside, and the woman knew that she had made a grave mistake. As soon as the children entered the house, the lights flickered and went out. The woman's heart pounded as she fumbled for her phone, but it was dead. She was alone with these eerie children in the dark, and she had no idea what they wanted. The boy and girl stood motionless, staring at her with those soulless black eyes. They said nothing, but their presence was suffocating. The woman tried to speak, but her throat was dry, and she couldn't find her voice. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine as she realized that the children were not alone. There was a figure standing behind them, a tall, shadowy figure that seemed to ooze darkness. The woman tried to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She was trapped in her own home with these demonic entities. As the night wore on, the woman felt her grip on reality slipping away. The children never spoke, but their eyes followed her every move. The shadowy figure seemed to grow stronger as the woman knew that her life was in danger. She tried to call for help, but her phone was still dead. She was alone, and she knew that she was going to die. Just as she was about to give up hope, the power flickered back on the children, and the shadowy figure vanished into thin air, leaving the woman trembling and alone. She couldn't explain what had happened, but she knew that it was not a dream. It was a nightmare that had become all too real. From that day on, the woman never forgot the knock at the door. She knew that evil could come knocking at any time, and that there was no telling what horrors it might bring. The woman's experience had left her shaken to the core. She tried to tell others what had happened, but no one believed her. They dismissed it as a figment of her imagination or a bad dream. But she knew the truth, and she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was still watching her, waiting to strike again. The days turned into weeks, and the woman tried to go on with her life as usual, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being followed. Every time she turned around, she felt as though someone was watching her. She started seeing shadowy figures out of the corner of her eye and strange noises in her house at night. One day, The woman came home to find her front door unlocked. She knew she had locked it when she left that morning, her heart racing. She cautiously entered her home only to find that it had been ransacked. Drawers had been emptied, furniture overturned, and there were strange symbols etched into the walls. The woman knew that the children and the shadowy figure had returned, and this time they weren't just visiting, they had invaded her home. And she had no idea what they were after in the days that followed. The woman's life became a living nightmare. The children and the shadowy figures seemed to be everywhere. Watching her every move, they taunted her with strange whispers and creaking noises in the night. She knew that she was being toyed with, but she didn't know why. Then, one night, the woman woke up to find the children and the shadowy figures standing at the foot of her bed. They were no longer the innocent-looking children that had knocked at her door that fateful night. Their eyes were glowing with malevolent intent and they looked hungry. The woman tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was paralyzed with fear. As the children and the shadowy figure approached her bed, they leaned in and the woman could feel their icy breath on her face. Then as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished into thin air. The woman knew that she had to do something to stop them. She started researching everything she could about the occult and paranormal, trying to find a way to banish these evil entities. She spent countless hours poring over ancient texts, trying to decipher the strange symbols that had been etched into her walls. Finally, after weeks of research, the woman discovered a ritual that she believed could banish the children and the shadowy figure from her home. She gathered all the materials she needed and performed the ritual, chanting ancient incantations and burning strange incense. As the smoke cleared, the woman felt a sense of relief wash over her. The children and the shadowy figure were gone, and she knew that she had banished them for good. But she also knew that she would never forget the knock at the door, or the horrors that had followed. She had survived, but she would never be the same again.